I know. Good to see you. I hope that you're not sticking in your heels. I'm sort of up on my toes as well. How are you doing, John? Good to see you. Hey, how are you doing? You're looking gorgeous too. I have your notes in here.
Please don't walk away with them.
You too, when you're done. Good morning, everyone. And thanks to my candidates for all being here. Thanks for joining us this morning. Almost 2 years ago, the PC government pulled a fast one on Albertans, only months after being re-elected. They used their majority on the legislature's Member Services Committee and voted to approve a 7.5% pay hike for all MLAs. Thanks to a boost in the taxpayer-funded RSP contribution, MLA base salary effectively went from approximately $145,000 a year to $156,000 a year. Wildrose MLAs strongly oppose the pay hike, and I want to state this off the top, that if we are elected in 2016, we will rescind the pay hike. Our members on the committee at the time voted against it, and we spent days in the legislature questioning the PCs about why they felt entitled to help themselves to a hefty raise for no reason whatsoever. As usual, the PCs just plowed ahead anyway. After some consideration and after hearing directly from Albertans, many who were frustrated, some who were outraged, the Wildrose Caucus team decided to take action in order to stand up for taxpayers. In the real world, you can't just give yourself a raise whenever you feel like it. You have to ask your boss first. If the PCs truly felt that they deserved a raise, they should have campaigned on that in 2012. In other words, they should have asked for it. But they didn't. They just took it. And in this case, we decided we could not rightfully accept something, a pay raise, that we didn't ask for. It was money that should have never belonged to us. So we have committed to rescind the pay raise if elected in 2016. And in the meantime, we decided that we didn't want to get used to receiving it. That's why Wildrose MLAs agreed to forfeit the additional pay and contribute it instead to the Wildrose Caucus Foundation, a charitable fund that we set up to make contributions to charities to deliver services in priority areas such as healthcare, education, and justice. In the year and a half since we set it up, the Wildrose Caucus Foundation has donated $60,000 to charitable organizations, including Little Warriors for the Be Brave Ranch and the Red Cross for typhoon relief in the Philippines. It's not a staggering amount of money, but I remain proud that we took a principled stand against the PC pay raise and did our part to stand up for taxpayers. And I'm just as proud to say that all four of our candidates in these by-elections, John Fletcher in Calgary-Elbow, Sheila Taylor in Calgary-West, MacDonald in Calgary-Foothills, and Tim Grover, who is here as well from Edmonton, representing us in Edmonton-Whitemud, will today sign a pledge that they will do the same should they be elected on October the 27th. I believe that this pledge sets our candidates apart from the pack and shows that they truly are a new generation of leadership that Albertans are looking for. John, Kathy, Sheila, and Tim will send a clear message to their constituents and indeed to Albertans that they know what it really means to put their interests of their constituents and Albertans first. I also believe that the Premier could learn a thing or two from these candidates. They are not in this for money or for perks. The Premier spent 2 weeks undoing the mistakes and scandals of the past before jumping into these by-elections, but there are two things that he did not do. First, he did not roll back the pay hike given to senior managers and political appointees, and he didn't roll back this MLA pay hike. While he was fixing every mistake he felt needed fixing, he left these two glaring displays of entitlement perfectly intact. I think that says a lot about the Premier, and once again I challenge him to do the right thing. He should roll back this surprise and undeserved pay hike and show Albertans that he is serious about fixing the PC culture of entitlement. Now I'll turn it over to Sheila, who will say a few words.
Thank you very much, Danielle. Do I need to do this, maybe?
Go.
I have to say I'm truly honored to be standing here this morning with my fellow candidates and our leader to make this pledge to join our future caucus and colleagues in forfeiting the MLA pay raise passed by the PCs and instead donating it to charity through the Wildrose Caucus Foundation. One of the reasons I am running for the Wildrose is the deep commitment they have shown to the taxpayers of Alberta. They have routinely and consistently stood up for taxpayers, whether it's against wasteful spending and debt on large scale, or against the kind of perks and entitlements we have seen in recent years. Perks and entitlements like this. Fiscal responsibility and respect for taxpayers were what guided me as a school board trustee, and they will be what will guide me as an MLA should the people of Calgary-West elect me on October 27th. As Danielle mentioned, the PCs did not campaign on a promise to raise their salaries in the 2012 election. I've been to enough doors in this campaign to know the kind of reaction they would have gotten if they did. The fact is, the PC showed their true colors when they helped themselves to this pay raise. That's why, when Wildrose Caucus Foundation Chair Carrie Toll asked me if I would consider joining the Wildrose MLAs in contributing this pay raise to the fund if I'm elected, it was an absolutely easy decision for me. And I know it was an easy decision for John, Kathy, and Tim as well. It's a small gesture, but I believe that it is an important one. I'm proud the Wildrose government would rescind this unfair pay raise, and I'm proud to sign this pledge this morning. I think it shows all of our constituents that if elected on October 27th, we will always show them the respect they deserve. Thank you very much.
Come stand behind me. All right, so with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Do you know what your opponent's going to say? You're not going to be able to attract the best people if you're taking them up.
I would say that we want to put the service back in public service, and MLAs were paid incredibly well before this pay increase came in. $145,000 a year is in the top 10% of income earners in the province. So I don't think that there is anyone who would look at that amount of money and say that MLAs were underpaid before this increase. I think there's a principle here as well, that if you are going to increase your pay, you've got to get the approval of taxpayers first, and this came through as a surprise 8 months after we'd already been elected. None of us expected it, and we think that if you're going to show leadership, you have to show leadership at the top. Remember the sequence of events that occurred. MLA pay went up, managers' pay went up, and then they tried to impose a legislative pay freeze on their frontline workers, which they ultimately ended up losing. But this is the reason why they have no credibility at the bargaining table with the public service, is because they don't take the first step of reducing their own pay and perks. We know that we have very serious hard economic times potentially ahead of us, with oil estimated to stay at around $80 a barrel for some time, that if we're still running multi-billion-dollar deficits. If we're going to be able to find the efficiencies in government to make sure that we can balance the budget, it starts with the politicians, which is why we would rescind this pay raise as one of our first actions if we're elected in 2016. Any other questions? I think that the PCs have demonstrated the same old attitude of entitlement by Mr. Prentice blowing off a debate in his own riding, by him blowing off a leaders' debate last week with the Alberta Union of Provincial Employees, by his candidates not showing up to debates. I think that it's a demonstration that they just don't feel that they should have to work and earn the votes that they get in their ridings. And I think that Albertans have a huge opportunity in these 4 ridings to send the PCs a message that they won't put up with the entitlement attitude. So we're going to keep on working hard all throughout the week, and I can tell you our candidates are eager to get back on the doors and start talking to constituents in their riding. But I think that every single moment that they can spend meeting with voters, they're able to convert people, and I think people are beginning to see that we're seeing just more of the same with this leader. I guess we'll find out on election day. We still have 7 days to go, but I can tell you that we increasingly at the doors are getting people wanting to take our signs, taking down signs of the other guys saying that they want to put ours up instead. We have had tremendous amount of volunteers come out on our Super Saturday weekends, and we've got one more weekend to go, so we're going to keep pushing hard right to the very end. I think that we are pointing out the things that Mr. Prentice desperately wants Albertans to forget. The culture of entitlement that exists in the party, the first-class airfares, the five-star hotels, pay raises for themselves and senior managers. These are all things that are relevant to how the future party is going to be governed and how the government is going to conduct itself. And quite frankly, when we start seeing these things, it's just a demonstration that it's more of the same. We think it's important for Albertans to know that this is not change. By changing one person at the top, we're not actually seeing a change in government. And I think it's important for us to have that message out in the middle of a campaign. Well, I have to wonder. I thought he was in the Conservative Party of Canada caucus for some time. Did he forget about the Michael Ignatieff ads and the Stéphane Dion ads and the Justin Trudeau ads? I think it's I have to say his comments have no credibility.
Well, thanks very much for that question. A very, very positive response at the door for me as a candidate for the Wildrose Party and for Danielle as our leader. It's just been incredible. The momentum out there, people are asking for our signs, and I'm really encouraged. It's really exciting. Thank you.
Well, Kathy obviously didn't make the decision to run the ad, so I'll answer the question. I have to tell you that, to me, pointing out the flaws in your opponent's campaign and policies and the record is part of politics. I'm sorry if Mr. Prentice thought that he was entering into a race that wouldn't include that, but I have to tell you, every political campaign requires the parties to put forward their own ideas and point out why the ideas and record of the other guys is not good for Alberta. This is just how politics works, and he can complain about it, or he can just sort of accept the reality that he is running for a political party that has had a ruinous record over the last 2.5 years of mismanagement and entitlement, and I don't think he's doing a very good job of defending that record.
Sort of positive question now. What you're referring to in relation to the housing issue that's happening in Calgary, especially with diverting any interest in looking at rent.
No, even if you look at what economists say about rent controls, it's sort of across the board. The only thing that economists from the left wing and the right wing agree on is that rent controls have the exact opposite effect of actually causing less investment in low-income housing. We think a better approach is to have targeted relief for those who are at the low end of the income scale. We're very, very supportive of the work that our communities are doing in trying to get multi-use communities built, but the main, and we've had some very successful programs that have happened including the municipal level, where they identify individuals who need a rent subsidy. That's the better approach. Otherwise, you end up with problems like was reported in the past of individuals who end up getting into a low income or low rent situation, and then as their income rises, they end up in a subsidized unit. We don't think that we should be subsidizing wealthy people, and the only way to be able to avoid that is to make sure that you've got targeted relief for those who actually need it. So that's the kind of approach that we would take instead. And obviously you want to make sure that you've got incentives in place to ensure that we've got more rental housing being built. And so there have been some policies in the past that have address the issue of the tax structure for how rental properties are taxed. That's something that we would probably want to talk with our federal counterparts to be able to look at. So there's a few mechanisms that you can use to encourage the increase of low-income housing, but rent control isn't the right answer.
Last question. Poll released by the Alberta Party.
You know what? Why don't we get each candidate to talk to you afterwards? And I'll just take, and you've had a couple of questions, I'm sorry. So let me just take one last one. Well, we have an internal poll showing that the Wildrose is at 100% support. And if anyone believes it, then that tells you what I think about about political parties releasing their own polls showing that they're gaining momentum. I got to tell you, I mean, as we know better than anyone, polls can change from day to day, from weekend to weekend, and we're going to continue working hard right to the very end. And hopefully we'll see what the real poll is on Election Day on October 27th. Thank you.